Good evening. Welcome to 60 Minutes in Black USA. My name is Mike Haynie. I hope everyone's had a great weekend. Looking forward to today's conversation. If it's anything that begins to kick off the holiday seasons and bringing family together and having conversations, there's two things that always get us going at the dinner table. It's politics and it's sports. And yet, last week we talked a bit about sports or the state of sports in the Black community. And today we're going to talk about politics and the state thereof in the Black community, and moreover, voting and the importance of voting. And today's guest, Beverly Cooper Wiele from Boston, Massachusetts, is just like us, man. It's the beauty of this young lady who I met some time ago and just enjoyed conversation with. She's just like us, a retiree in one sense from a profession, but an advocate, a fierce advocate when it comes to voting and politics in the Black community and moving things forward. And I hope at the end of our broadcast today, each of us take a look at what Beverly took as a passion and see what we can do to enhance and do something about whatever it is that we have concerns about relative to politics. And Beverly travels all over. She travels all over advocating for elections that are fair, that promote candidates, that look at what it is that we need to do as an agenda. So we're going to bring Beverly on and have a great conversation about a multitude of things in our community relative to the atmosphere of politics today. But first, I want to play something. And we got permission from a guy named Yellow Pain in YouTube to play this educational video. And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And so I ask you to pay close attention to the words in this video. And let me cue this thing up for you.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes. I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us. And that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. When I'm supposed to do write letters. When I'm supposed to do blame Trump. He ain't never really gave it. Ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough. Let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws. They just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch. Yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in '08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws. They the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court calls. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
How about that video? Yellow Pain told the truth about the process. And that's why it's so important that we understand that presidential elections notwithstanding, we all turned out for Obama. We all turned out in 2008 and voted. And then we wondered in 2010 why he couldn't get anything passed thereafter, because he lost the House, and so bills that he tried to put before could not get passed. And so there's more to election than every 4 years, even the local aspect of elections. So I'm not going to take up all this time because I'm going to bring Beverly in because she really understands it. And particularly now since midterms are coming up, we got to take a look at Biden and how Biden is doing relative to what he committed to our community. And we got to understand what Biden needs relative to our support if we still believe in Biden. In 2 years, when midterms come up, we got to take a look at Virginia and see if Virginia and New Jersey are a symbol of what may happen in 2024 in terms of another presidential election, because this country is in a turmoil politically. And I think we started to see some things the past couple of weeks with a couple of the elections nationwide, which shows that politics is on a short lease. Biden was just inaugurated in January, and right now his approval rating is 42%, and he has lost 25% in approval ratings in the Black community. So we're going to address that. We're going to find out why. We're going to get a sense of what you think about that, and if we're getting, once again, the raw deal. And moreover, Democratic Party does not stand for democracy. So what does democracy look like? And do we really need to take a look at the Republican Party as well? It may be 50-50. Half of us go there and half of us go there. But we're going to ask Beverly. Hey, Beverly,
Hello.
what's up?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
From Boston.
That's me. But
Boston,
you've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to live there, the bastion of democracy with Tip O'Neill and Mike Dukakis and the Kennedys, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Although I got to remember when I was up there and they were dealing with segregation,
Yes.
and I got called some unbelievable names. So, but it just shows you the issues that we have all over our country. Beverly, tell us a little bit about yourself. I told viewers that you were just another great person that decided to take on a passion of yours. But tell us who you are, what you do, what you enjoy.
Well, you were very kind to say so many nice things about me. I am just a regular schmegular person, although I confess to being a nerd. That's how it is with me. I was born in Washington, D.C., which might be how I got a little interest in politics by osmosis. I came to Boston to go to Boston University. I stayed here. I met my husband here. He stayed here. So here I am. That was more years ago than I'm going to tell you. I'm a retired teacher. I call myself the untired teacher because I'm retired from teaching, but I'm never tired of teaching. And Michael is right. My avocation is to get people of color more involved in national electoral politics. And people might be asking, like, why national? Why not where I live? And it's because Congress, the yellow paint talked about, Congress is a 435-piece puzzle.
Wow.
And every piece of that puzzle needs to be the way you want it to be. Now,
Wow.
if you're Black, it probably makes sense for that puzzle to be blue. So even if you don't care about the other 434 pieces, they still affect you. So you want to be able to help out candidates in other places who have a chance of helping the Congress stay blue. Right now, Democrats have a 3-vote majority. We tend to lose seats in the midterms.
So you're talking about in the House, right? In the House.
In the House. That's
Right.
right.
Because, as an example, Bev, I know that the president is celebrating his victory over the recent passing of this $1.3 trillion bill that initially was $3 trillion, that he said when I attended his town hall in Baltimore that he would get to us as a people and the issues that we're having as soon as he passed this, right? And so when I was looking at the data or the vote recently, and I saw the fact that they needed a certain number of Republicans to support this because a certain number of Democrats didn't. Yeah, the margins were small and it barely passed. And I said to myself, I wonder what's going to happen in 2 years where typically you see parties switch from the elected governor to the opposite party. So talk about that. Can you talk about what has been happening in the recent elections around the country, as you mentioned, anyway, and where we have a chance to gain and lose, and who's on our side and understands what an agenda looks like for Black people?
Okay. First, let me talk a little bit about Build Back Better. It actually didn't start at 3.5 trillion. It started closer to 6 trillion. And people think, oh, $6 trillion, what a huge amount of money, we can never afford it. Well, that's not 6.5 trillion like beginning on, next October 1st. That's 6.5 trillion over 10 years. It doesn't all happen at once. Okay, they knew the Republicans weren't going to settle, weren't going to, want that amount of money ever. So they brought it down to 3.5. Joe Manchin, whom I'm sorry, I can't believe a word he says, well, we need to be able to, to make it bipartisan. We've got to have the Republicans agree. Republicans don't agree to anything. There's not a single Republican who voted for the Affordable Care Act when Barack Obama was president. There wasn't a single Republican who voted for the COVID relief bill. Now, when the checks started to come to their states, Republican governors got out there like with the big giant checks as if they had something to do with it. Or Republicans who had stuff happen in their congressional districts came out holding the big giant checks as if they had something to do with it.
Hey, Bev, let me ask you. So you mentioned Joe Manchin was a holdup. And what was it, Cinnamon or Cinema?
Kirsten Sinema.
I know her name, the lady from Arizona. Were they Republican?
They act like Republicans.
Oh, no, Bev, no.
Yes.
So what were they? Were they Democrat, Republicans? Because I'm going to go somewhere with this.
Oh, no, they're
Democrats.
Democrats.
Play devil's advocate, but were they Republican?
No, they're Democrats.
Okay, so what was their issue?
Their issue is probably that each of them is more beholden to corporate interests than they are to the American people. But I'll tell you, because you want to push back a little, I don't want people concentrating just on Manchin and Sinema. I want them concentrating on the 50 Republicans who in lockstep vote against anything that's going to benefit the American people.
Wow. Well, I'm not pushing back. What I want to do is ensure that, the conversation is whole, because I was doing some research, and do you know we've had 11 black senators in this country since Reconstruction? 11, right? Only 11 in 250 some years, 11. And there
Mm.
have been what, three, four, five, or six? I think the first one was Republican. So
Well,
is this a party of evil that we
now,
should stay away from? What are you saying about Democrat?
okay, now, Michael, you know your history as well as I do. So you know that before the Civil War, the Republicans were the so-called liberal party. They were the abolitionists. The Democrats were the people who continue to want slavery. So
So
after the Civil War,
it was reversed to what it is now. Is that what you're saying?
it went reverse in 1960 to 1964.
Ah, okay.
After the election of JFK, people expected him to be a little more tolerant towards civil rights. More blacks voted for him. When Lyndon Johnson became president, as you recall, all the civil rights legislation that essentially made life better for us happened under Johnson. Already by the 64 election, there were some Democrats who had switched parties. After 64, more Democrats, who they called the Dixiecrats because they were Southerners, switched over to the Republican Party. Liberal Republicans began voting Democratic. So yes, there was a reversal. After the Civil War, the first black senators and congressmen were Republicans because that was the party of freedom.
Didn't you guys have a very famous Republican senator, Edward Brooke?
We did.
From Massachusetts?
From Massachusetts.
He's a great guy, wasn't he? Wasn't he a very good guy?
He did a lot of great legislation, but if you remember his ultimate downfall, it seems that he wasn't very nice to his family, and that's what got him into trouble.
And Bev, what I'm trying to get to with our viewers, and we're going to particularly talk about in the second hour, as we talk, second half hour, as we talk about force multiplier, is to understand the dynamics. Understand the dynamics, get involved, because if we don't know necessarily what an enemy looks like, if we decide to call it that and understand the factual nature of it, then how can we make good comprehensive decisions? One of the things that I see, based on the data that I'm going to put up there, is that blacks as a whole, as a demographics in this country, and this is from a totally neutral perspective, vote unbelievably in one direction, the Democratic Party. So do you think that the Democratic Party takes the black vote for granted?
They took the black vote for granted for some years. But after Barack Obama, you noticed that they realized, wait a minute, there are more people out there who can support us than who actually show up to vote. And of course, the more you show up, the more you're able to make demands of people. Blacks made it very clear that they're responsible for Joe Biden being president.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
Oh, of course. James Clyburn in South Carolina turned it around for Joe Biden. And after that, more of us got on the bandwagon. Now, we still didn't vote in the amounts that we should have in 2010 and definitely in 2016. But Democrats know now that, no, we can't be taken for granted. However, if you're black and you vote for a Republican these days, one would question whether you have your own interests at heart.
So let me give you an example of where somebody may push back on that, because in the state of Maryland, we have Larry Hogan, a Republican governor, right?
Yes.
And in Baltimore City, which is over 60-some% black, I think he garnered close to 20% of the black vote in the second term of his election, because they describe him as more of a moderate Republican. I'm only pointing this out because, I think what happened versus his first term, black people, which I hope that they do when they leave after your education today, did a lot more research on the issues. And you couldn't just, bowl them over because you said you were a Democrat and this is what you were going to do. They weighed their options. And I'm not saying Hogan is all this or that, and I'm not saying whatever. All I'm saying is that people seem to listen to his platform. Moreover, black people in a lot of urban environments, and they supported him. So there appears to be something in the Republican Party, depending on the person, that people will support. Is that wrong?
Well, I'm going to say 20% isn't actually overwhelming because that means that 80% voted Democratic.
Right.
If
Good
a
point.
Republican candidate meets your needs, then vote for them. However, since 1968 and Nixon, there have been very few Republicans who have attempted to meet our needs. And in fact, as you know, they run very much on hidden racial messaging. White people get it because they're supposed to get it. So they know who to vote for. We tend to stay home.
What does that mean? We tend to stay home.
That means that we have the ability to vote, but we don't, which is why people were amazed when we turned out in such numbers for Barack Obama. Then they saw, wow, these people are a juggernaut. They can turn an election around if they want to. And that's what Joe Biden discovered. We turned it around for him.
Is that how President Trump got elected in 2016? Because blacks didn't vote? Is it totally on us that he got into office, you think?
Well, let's put it this way. There are plenty of racist white people out there, and they've been trying to get back ever since Barack Obama became president. It was absolutely an existential crisis for some white people that a black male could be better educated, smarter, better looking, had a happy family, and was in charge of the country, if not the world. Right away, you saw the so-called Tea Party come up. The Republicans in Congress dissed him disgustingly. We showed up for him. We tolerated Republicans dissing him. We didn't know better than not to show up in 2010 because we figured, hey, Barack Obama's president, we've got the job done. Nothing I have to do now. The opposing party always tends to take seats during the midterms, but they didn't have to take as many seats as they did.
And why was that again? Because of the turnout, or because the antagonistic mood of Republicans and whites to come out and go against Obama? Which one do you think, or a combination of both?
It was both. It was both. They were definitely geared up to try to do anything they could to harm this black man. And, as Yellow Pain said, everyone said, oh, Obama's president, I'm in good. You can't vote just for the president. You've got to vote in every single election, even if it's a dog catcher, no matter how minor you think it is.
Absolutely. Well, let's fast forward it a minute, Bev. Let's call 2022, right? Let's call Joe Biden a black man. Let's act as though it's back in Obama Day 2008, and 2022 will be the midterm, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that the polls, if the 2024 election was held today, they say that Donald Trump will run. That's a fact. Number two is that he would defeat Joe Biden by 5 points. Okay, so let's say that we know that as a community, because this is part of the education process and why you and I are on here talking about this today, so that we can prepare ourselves to ensure that certain things don't happen. So what is it that we need to understand about the importance of 2022 with a black advocate in the White House, and what can we do to ensure that what happened in 2010 doesn't happen in 2022?
That is a great question. I love that. Well, the first thing we can do after remembering what happens in 2010 is to prevent that in 2022. We are pretty angry with Joe Biden now, and we're asking, Why isn't he doing what he's supposed to do? Why can't he do more? Well, you've obviously got enough Republicans in the Senate and in the House who oppose him. We can't say, oh, I'm upset, therefore I'm going to stay home. If we stay home, even more Republicans will get elected and they will thwart Joe Biden's agenda even more. They thwart his agenda and then we blame him. Why can't he get anything done? If we're disappointed between 2022 and 2024, that's just giving the Republicans fodder. That's like saying, hey, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Well, I'm hoping that Donald Trump isn't planning to run in 2024. I think he's just raising money by claiming he's going to do so.
So you think that's a good strategy for us to assume? Because I know he caused quite a few people angst, and it caused me angst as well.
Yes.
This guy just, had a terrible disposition, and he riled up the worst of our country. I mean, he brought out the worst as a country of who we were. And if I never see him again in public office to be our leader, I'll be happy. But based on what we're hearing, let's assume that he is. What do we need to do to ensure that that doesn't happen? What do we need to do?
Okay, let me disagree with you on one point.
What's that?
Donald Trump is one of the worst people in the world, but he's not the worst person in the world because he's got all of these people who know he's a fraud. They know he's a liar. They enable him anyway. He didn't bring the hatred. On January 2009, when Barack Obama was elected president, every hater came out from under the woodwork. You remember how they dissed Obama. You remember how they thwarted him at every turn. If you remember back to 2009, I remember that as school began, he wanted to do a closed circuit thing in schools where he essentially told people, hey, it's a new school year. We really want you to do well. White parents were up in arms. Who does he think he is? How dare he think he can speak to my child? Do you think they would have done that with a white president? No. So everybody who wanted to hate was already there. They set the table for Donald Trump. And as far back as 2015, when he was thinking about running, there were people who said, well, he says what I'm thinking. If that's what you're thinking, then I'm fearing for my well-being.
Absolutely. And so as a forward thought, because I got to tell you, time moves very fast, and
Yes, it does.
made a tremendous statement. And to your point, it's not 4 years that we have to gear up to vote again. It's 2 years that we have to look at, and particularly our local elections. And so are we beginning to see some movement relative to the mood of the country? Because I think that people had Joe Biden on a short leash, people in general, relative to the coronavirus, relative to the economy. Because I got to tell you, Bev, last year, I think I was paying $2.29 or $2.94 for gas, and this year I'm paying close to $4, right?
Mhm.
And so I guess everyone says, well, it got to be the man in office to blame, even though the economy is moving and we know there's some mitigating circumstances. But this short lease that Biden's on that has him at numbers from a popularity of his politics perspective has us in a position where we got to get on the defensive or the offensive if we want to avoid a disaster in 2024 and 2022, right? Do you agree?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you asked that because I love explaining something to folks. We like to be opinionated about politics, but we're not always as informed as we need to be. So gas is whatever it is, $4. Joe Biden has nothing to do with the price of gas. How could he possibly? Is he mining or digging up oil wells or going to gas stations and putting stickers on gas pumps? No, of course not. Gas prices are up because, first of all, during COVID, think of all the people who stayed home. There was no demand for gas, so gas prices went down. When there's no demand for something, the price drops. Now, not only is there more demand because people are going places, but because of the famous supply chain, which is a real thing, people have to pay more money to get things moving.
But you know what, Bev? I don't disagree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at people that look like us and the people that don't look like us, it's unfortunate that the person in the seat is going to take the blame. I mean, Joe Biden might as well be pumping the gas into my car, man. Every time I see $3.94, I'm sure there are a lot of other people that look at the same thing for loaf of bread, etc., because we simplify that. You and I know that the price with OPEC has a lot to do from the complicity perspective, but this is why we're breaking it down for people to give them a bit of an understanding, but what the power of their vote, right, can
Absolutely.
do to ensure. So Bev, give me like 30 seconds before we resume. It's halfway through and we've had a real engaging, energetic conversation, but I'm forced to do a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So hey, this is 60 Minutes in Black USA. Mike Haynie. We're here every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 7. And we're on the Black USA Network, which is a network that publicizes news, information 7 days a week. And it was founded by Donnie Glover, phenomenal broadcaster, journalist, has been at the White House on numerous occasions. Donnie felt that this was a platform that was necessary to give information and to give Blacks an opportunity to have conversations as we're having today. So Monday through Friday, you got Black USA News from 10 to 11 with Donnie. At 7 o'clock, you got Shared Spaces with Quita, Chap, and Dason. The Donnie Glover Show on Tuesdays at 7. Sister Biz with Nicole and Tamara. Black Business Roundtable, our most popular show. Black Business Roundtable, our highest viewership, at least for a couple weeks till we get this one going, at 7 o'clock every Thursday. On Fridays, it's Black Crypto News and the Blackout live from New York with Tasmir, Saturdays at 10:15. So if you are interested, we're looking for a sports show, we're looking for a cooking show, we're looking for a fashion show. Email Donnie at blackusanews.com. If there is a talent that you have and you're located in New Orleans, in Miami, in Wisconsin, we're looking to house and platform this show all over. So, Bev, thank you so much. So, back to what we were talking about for a couple more minutes before we talk about that force multiplier that
Okay.
you're associated with. So Black people feel because his poll numbers are down, Biden's poll numbers are down since January,
Yes.
over 25% in the Black community because they felt as though he should have addressed their agenda items right away. What were the agenda items that you recall that Biden ran on that the Blacks ran and supported him?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to remember so long ago because I'm an old lady, but I can tell you what people blame him for. We know that a lot of the congestion in the House and Senate has to do with the filibuster. I hear people complaining all the time. Why doesn't Joe Biden do something about the filibuster? Why doesn't he do something about the filibuster? Changing the filibuster takes a 60 vote majority in the Senate.
Mhm.
There is nothing Joe Biden can do about that. That's up to the Senate. But people blame him. Now, can he talk about it and say, wow, Senate, I wish you'd get on this? Yes, he can. Can he make any changes to it? No, he can't. Now, I see that you've got a person on named Kathy who also says that we've got to think about redistricting. Joe Biden can't do anything about that. That's entirely up to state legislatures. There are people who are saying, well, what about all of these voting restrictions? Why don't they want us to vote? Again, Joe Biden has nothing to do with that. He wouldn't because we're the ones who put him over. We blame him. Essentially, he's the target. He's the arrow that we can point at. When he has to deal with Republicans who take things away, now imagine all of the things they would have or would have more of if Build Back Better stayed at $6 trillion. Nope.
Now you mentioned that Biden can't change the procedural rules to end the filibuster.
Right.
And so activists in the Black community, particularly, I was looking at something that Cliff Albright, a co-founder of Black
Mm-hmm.
Voter Matters, said
Mm-hmm.
that even if Biden can't, he can come out in favor of them doing so, which he has said that he's in opposition of. Is that true?
I'm not sure. I think I've heard both. I've heard some Democrats say that they're in opposition to changing the filibuster because if the shoe is on the other foot and they're in power, then and they're not in power, they don't want to have to be subject to trying to get 60 votes.
So they're saying that so they're looking out for the Republicans and saying that if they were in office, then the same thing would happen. Isn't politics a blood sport? Isn't
They're
it all
looking.
about who has the power at the time and the moment? And if Joe Biden said to us he had our back, you mentioned that Clyburn pulled him over the finish line, gave him an opportunity. And I was at the town hall when Biden said, again, I said it earlier, that
Mm-hmm.
he will get to our agenda. He knows he's behind us, what he
Yes.
said to the
Yes.
Black Morgan State student that asked him the question because everyone was concerned about, his importance relative to criminal justice reform, as well as the Voting Rights Act that could pass if we had a simple majority that he doesn't control, but he could come out in favor of that, right? But is it,
I'm not sure. As I said, he can certainly talk about the filibuster, but there is nothing he can do about it. Senate rules or House rules have to do with, what you need 50-50 to do. And I'm really not entirely sure of that. So I don't want to say something that I don't know. Now, when we talk about having our back, well, yeah, Biden's trying to have a lot of people's backs. We started out with, what was it, 12 weeks of paid leave for parents after the birth of a child. We're down to 4. I think there might be working families who say, wow, Biden, he said he'd have our back, but he doesn't. Again, there was nothing he could do about that.
wow.
The child tax credit, the $250 or $300 per month that people have been getting for their kids. He'd like for that to be more permanent, or at least go on beyond this year, but there are others who are opposed to it. It can't be in the bill if people aren't going to vote for it. And it was just yesterday or Friday night that Nancy Pelosi finally got to put that bill on the floor because people were not putting things into it. They were taking things out of it.
When you describe people that weren't, can we say honestly that it was a multitude of party people from Democrats, right? As well as Republicans. So it wasn't necessarily a party issue. She had a myriad of, because in the Democratic Party, you're talking about moderates, you're talking about progressives, et cetera, and everyone wanted a piece of the pie. So the Democratic Party had as much to do with the issues before he went overseas to the G7 summit or whatever summit he went to, not passing this, right? That the Democrats were really the holdup because he knew if he didn't get the Democratic support, knowing the Republicans wouldn't support it, that it wasn't going to go through. So we've got turmoil, it appears to be in the party called the Democratic Party. Would you agree?
I wouldn't call it turmoil. I would call it disagreement. Now, remember, everyone who was Democratic was happy to vote for more. But you remember that 6 Democrats didn't vote for it because they still said it wasn't enough, and we don't want to take our bills separately. My mind is kind of wandering. I'm not remembering the second part of the legislation, but they voted against it because they wanted more, not because they wanted less. Gotcha. And there are Republicans who crossed over. Now, I'm not going to tell you that every Democrat is like, whoop-de-doo, let's spend lots of money. There are certainly those who can hide behind Republicans who don't want to spend more. And for a lot of Democrats, that depends on their constituency. Right. Not everybody's from Massachusetts.
Hey, I'm going to ask you a devil's advocate question before we
Feel
get into
free.
force multiplier, right? So I mentioned earlier, suppose we had a strategy as a community or as a demographic where half of us went to the Republican Party and the other half of us went to the Democratic Party. Is there anything wrong that we couldn't influence the process that way? Would we have better leverage than now we are all seemingly, or as a whole, over 80% of the Black people vote Democratic, right? And we seem to struggle in terms of getting things done. Do you think it would be better if we had a strategy in our community of if these are the two important parties that we kind of split our way there? What do you think?
I wouldn't try that. Maybe someone else would. I've sometimes said in jest that maybe we all ought to join the Republican Party and scare them, which is what it would do. Right now, I think our focus needs to be on the Democrats because we know who meets our needs. There are Black Republicans out there. I don't know why they're there because, don't want to say bad words about them, but they don't seem to have our best interests, in mind. I
Now,
really like.
Virginia just elected a Black female Republican lieutenant governor, right?
Yes,
Winsome Sears.
yes.
Maryland has a Black lieutenant governor,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems as though,
Is he a Republican? I don't know.
yeah. So the Black lieutenant governor in Maryland, Boyd Rutherford, is Black, and it seems as though they have done, and the same thing the Republican governor that we had before, Bob Ehrlich, elected or brought Michael Steele. And all I'm doing, Bev, is just making sure that we widen our perspective and investigate, because I think sometimes when people take us for granted, and I'm wondering if that's the reason that Joe Biden's poll is down 25% in our community since January, is that people believe that the Democratic Party is taking Blacks' votes for granted and feel as though that they can say anything to us and get away with it. But let's switch over
Okay.
to what we can do as a person, because as I told people earlier, the thing I love about you, when they talk about force multiplier, which is a concept in an organization you work with, that's what I see you as. Someone that's a force multiplier for the passion and advocacy you believe in. What does force multiplier mean, and what do you guys do?
Well, I'll try. And I think I've said some of this to you before. After the 2016 election, there were a lot of people who were very unhappy. There was a group of people in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is the community next door, primarily Jewish people, who got together and said, how could this happen? Because not only is Donald Trump racist, but he's also anti-Semitic. And they said, okay, let's all die now. There's nothing we can do. But for good reasons, they couldn't all commit suicide, and they probably weren't going to. So they said, if we can't do that, we've got to do something. What can we do? In Massachusetts, even though we have a Republican governor, Massachusetts is pretty blue. We don't have to work. We don't have to work here. But the thing they thought they could do was concentrate on congressional races in other states where there was a Democrat who could possibly turn over a seat that was on the bubble. Maybe it was a toss-up race, and if the Democratic candidate got more support, they could possibly win. So in 2018, this group came up with 15 Democratic candidates in different states, raised about $800,000 for them, which was a lot in those days, and 13 of the 15 won. How they raised that money was simply inviting candidates to Massachusetts, and one email at a time, which is the force of multiplication, getting people to meet the candidates, donate to them, don't have to fall in love with them, but understand the perspectives of Democrats who are in states beyond their own, and get them into office. Because, as I said at the very beginning, Congress is a 435-piece puzzle. We need as many pieces of that puzzle to be blue. So that was the good news, 13 out of 15. Well, based on that success, we got more people. Essentially, we find a candidate, send an email about them saying, please come, please contribute, we'd like your help. And between 2018 and the 2020 election, we raised another $7 million, which is not a bad amount of money. There was a lot of anti-Trump money there. There was a lot of real disappointment after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, because people pretty much knew that the Supreme Court was a gonzo. We worked very hard. We didn't have as much luck with the candidates that we had supported, but everybody called that wrong, unfortunately. There was no pollster who got the congressional races right, us among them. But that's what we do. All we do is raise money. We don't have an office. We don't have a staff. We don't have a telephone. We're just a bunch of people on a computer who now hold candidate events by Zoom, and every penny of everything goes to the candidate through Act Blue, which, as you know, is the Democratic housekeeping organization.
So, Bev, let me ask you, so do you feel as though as a community, we could do a better job of financially supporting the candidates that are, because you described in our pre-conversations a few days ago or so, you talked about the fact that you are an advocate staunch of the Black agenda, not brown and black, of the Black agenda. And so it doesn't always necessarily mean a Black candidate. It could mean a candidate that understands and favor where it is that we feel we need to go. Do you feel as though as a community we could do more from a financial perspective to back these candidates?
Absolutely. I explain elections to people like this. We all say we've got to get out and vote, which is true. We've got to do that. But voting is like the last move in a chess game. Elections are long games. They start way before election day. And the earlier you get to move your pieces in that game, the better chance you have of winning.
Now, you all hear what Bev just said. She said that elections start well before the election day. That's why we're having this conversation now, because and you have heard it here on 60 Minutes in Black USA from Beverly Cooper Wiele, that if you don't begin to think about the midterms in 2022, don't be surprised at what happens in 2024. Go ahead, Bev.
Wow. I don't know how to follow that. No, but that's it. As a people, we're just not that involved in national politics. We want people to look like us. You don't have to look like me to represent my interest. If you're in California and you want a higher minimum wage, you want to deal with housing prices, you want to expand the civil rights agenda, you don't have to look like me. You just have to work for my interests. And we don't know enough about other people who are working in our interests. And as a community, we're accustomed to giving money, discretionary money, to our churches. We give a lot there. We give money to relatives who need help. And sometimes we give money to a lot of businesses that don't need it. I don't have any Louis Vuitton in my house because that corporation does not need my money. It has absolutely no influence on what happens to me in my life. But somebody in some other state who's going to be a congressperson who advocates for $3.5 million for Build Back Better instead of $1.5 million for Build Back Better has an influence on my life, and I want them to win.
Well, I think one thing, Bev, that we saw happen in the most recent Senate elections last year was Raphael Warnock. He raised a considerable amount of money because we understood and we got that. We knew we would potentially lose Kamala Harris. And it's unfortunate that the Democratic governor out there did not pick a woman of color or black woman to replace her. So, but people got behind Raphael Warnock in a big way. He raised a considerable amount of money outside of Georgia from black people. The same thing with the Senate candidate in North Carolina, whose name escapes me.
Jamie Harrison.
Yeah, exactly, because they thought they had a real good chance of overturning that. What was that guy's name down there?
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham, right? We thought that he had a chance, but at the end of the day, I think that you finally saw where black people understood the relevance and the importance of having seats in the House comparative to the party that they wanted in the White House. Because if not, you get nothing done.
You get nothing done. That you get nothing done unless you control both houses. Now, if you control the Senate, you have a little more power, because you'll remember the Senate holding up Merrick Garland as a Supreme Court justice, just every Republican in lockstep, refusing even to meet the man. And then every Republican in lockstep, like days before the election, confirming another conservative Republican Supreme Court justice.
Would you say, Bev, that the most damaging aspect of the Trump term was the turn on the Supreme Court?
Yes, the turn on the Supreme Court, and again, this is due to Republicans. The number of judges at the sub-federal level.
Absolutely. And Yellow Payne talked about that. He talked about the fact that George Floyd can't have a law, because he described that. And Yellow Payne, you guys, the video that we played at the top of the hour, go please take a look at it. But the bigger thing to look at it for is for your kids and your grandkids, so they understand the relevance of what the decisions we make at the polls and the implications that they have. Because Donald Trump has affected our court system for probably 2 generations, maybe?
His Republican pals did that. When Barack Obama put up candidates for federal court, Republicans sat on them without confirming them for his entire tenure. That meant that once he was out, there was this huge backlog of federal judges to be confirmed. And once Obama was gone, his candidates were gone as well. Republicans put in their own very conservative candidates, and they passed them, faster than you can pop candy out of a Pez dispenser.
Wow.
So people who think, well, I shouldn't vote, politics is against me. We didn't vote, and we essentially got 20, 25, 30 years of people at the federal level who are working against our interests, and they're in there for life. There's nothing we can do about it. So when people say, oh, the Democrats don't do anything for me, if we had had the Senate, we'd have hundreds of Obama-appointed federal judges making life better for us. Now we don't.
Wow. So, Bev, in our final few minutes, as a person, what is it that I can do to affect change in my community politically? Absolutely go to the polls and vote every election, right?
Absolutely.
But what are some of the other things? I think you were mentioning some of the things that force multiply or does in terms of housing, this or that. But talk to the viewers, and say to them, this is what you could be and should be doing, from educating our kids to holding groups and churches or whatever we need to do to bring money and support candidates, and let them know we're supporting them financially. But what are some of the other things we could be doing?
Well, the first thing we need to do is think about how politics really does affect our lives at a national level. Research shows that Black income goes up during Democratic administrations. We need to understand what is in our benefit to have. We need to understand that. Then we need to say, well, I'm not really into this, or I don't have money. We need to get people to contribute to candidates, not only because early money helps, but also because people pay attention to who contributes to them. If you've contributed to somebody early in the race, they may not know your name, but you're going to get that thank you letter. They're going to remember that you voted. Every penny counts. Every penny counts not only because the candidate needs it, but because candidates who get money remember where it came from. You have to spread the word among your friends. Now, I'll give myself a little plug. I send you force multiplier emails. I want you to forward those to 10 people you know who are politically active. And then I want those 10 people to forward them to other people who are politically active. There are folks just waiting to be asked. They haven't been asked. The other thing is, and my husband's a Civil War buff, and he tells me this story, that during the Civil War, people were always talking about what Robert E. Lee was going to do. Bobby Lee does this, Bobby Lee does that. And U.S. Grant said, don't worry about what he's going to do to you. Worry about what you're going to do to him. So I don't want us in a defensive position. I want us in an offensive position. Think about what you can do. Yes, if you go to church, you can have a church group talk about this. You can have your own sorority, fraternity, book club. Everybody can contribute $10 a month. If you've got 20 people in your book club, that's $200. You could give a candidate $200 at the end of the month. You could give a bunch of candidates a couple $1,000 at the end of a year.
Should I expect something for that from that candidate besides a thank you letter?
You can expect a thank you. You can expect them to get elected, because if they get elected, then then they can really help you. Are they going to do something for you personally and individually? If you are not in their district, which is what I'm advocating, that you support people who live outside of your district, because even if they do, you still need that piece of the puzzle.
Wow, Bev. So this just opens up another can of worms, and we have to have you back, because when you talk special interest politics, so me as an individual, you mentioned, should I expect something in return? No, it's part of the big picture. But if I'm a union, or if I'm the CEO of Amazon and I need favorable trade and labor laws, and I give a fundraiser for $10 million, which is what we see, particularly at the local level, that's where we lose our agenda. So now all of a sudden you're advocating that we raise money. Yeah, I think that there's always about what it is we get, but we know that raising money and special interests is synonymous with the agenda of politicians. Do you agree?
Every politician needs money. They need money. They need money to run. They need to buy advertising. They need to rent office space. They need to feed their volunteers. But if you remember Citizens United, that was when the Supreme Court said that businesses could contribute as much in corporate PACs as they wanted to. Well, that's the only way that we'll be able to compete. Our dollars multiplied by one another,
Right.
Our forces multiplied by one another. You and I aren't rich. I know a few wealthy people, but they don't have $10 million.
Wow.
They're not Facebook. They can't do what a lot of corporations do, headed by people we've heard of.
Bev, I tell you, this has been a captivating discussion. And I told you an hour would go real quickly. We
You're
could
right.
probably go another hour or two, because I've got like 10 more questions for you, man. But I'm going to bring someone on with you the next time. But I want final thoughts from you and a commitment that you'll come back and you will talk with us again. Will you commit to that?
I promise. I absolutely promise.
Well, good. I'm going to give you the last minute then before we are at the 7 o'clock hour. Your final thoughts.
If I have the last minute, I would say use your imagination and don't feel defeated. I had a lot of people say, "Oh, look at those Republicans! Look at what they do. They're making it like illegal to give people water in a voting line." And I said to someone, "Okay, if you can't give people water, you can sell people water. You can sell it for a penny. You can sell it for a nickel. But what you need to do is outthink the people who are trying to outthink you." So get together, do those things, and then as a force, all fingers in a fist, make that happen.
Thank you,
That's our
Bev. Thank you
job.
so much. Thank you to our viewers for watching today. 60 Minutes in Black USA with Beverly Cooper Wiele out of Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so much again, Bev. We'll see you soon. Have a great week, everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bev, that was a lot of fun.